Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Legends and Legacies. I'm your host, Jim Daneker, and today is a really special episode for me. Our guest is an artist whose career spans more than 40 years. She crossed over into mainstream pop in the 80s with over 30 million records sold, 6 number ones, lots of top 40 singles, 6 Grammys, 26 Dove Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Kennedy Center Honors Award recipient. She's well known to many as one of the kindest human beings to walk the planet. She's a living legend and a friend, the one and only Amy Grant. I don't know if you can squeeze this in on your resume. I don't think you have any room left, but you're one of my favorite bosses I've ever had. Over 30 years. So, yeah, anyway, again, thank you for taking the time to do this. This means a lot. Okay, Amy, so you grew up in the 60s and 70s when music was very organic. You know, there were no synthesizers and drum machines. So tell us a little bit about that transition from, you know, the age-to-age record, straight ahead, to the neon and leopard print era of UNGUARDED. Was that a conscious decision? Was that just a product of the times? Can you revisit that a little bit?
Sure. First off, when I knew we were going to be talking about the 80s, the recording era for me of the 80s, starting in the fall of 1981, and then we went as a group to Caribou Ranch. So my recording experience for the first time in my life was a destination studio in the right next, in Colorado. And the first week we took the band and their families, wives, children. We all ate dinner together at a table, one long table. And the second week we invited all my family, my grandmothers, my siblings, their children, management, their families, and we did that anyway. And so all the music that I recorded in the 80s, 4 records at Caribou Ranch, and then Lead Me On was in the fall of 88. That was everything that happened. 5 new records and 1 compilation, so 6 records in the 80s. All of those were about creating community. Every single one was about the importance of proximity in the creative process, being able to stay late, waking up early, you're all there. All those things matter. Doing the Lead Me On record, which was the last one, there was a studio that was also an historic house in Franklin, Tennessee. And we had microphones in every room.
Bennett House?
Bennett House. Yeah. And we ate dinner together. And it was, so to me, it's all about togetherness.
Yeah.
And not having necessarily the end already decided. There was so much exploration. And that was good. That's so different than currently where everything is on a grid.
Yeah.
And so the leopard print jacket might have seemed like a strategic move, but like everything in my life, it falls into that category of, hey, it all worked out just like we didn't plan. Right. That's like a catchphrase that I say with Jennifer Cook, my manager, all the time, because I never have an end goal in mind.
Okay.
And to me, I feel like if I have a strength, it's being present in the moment. And so I kind of trust whatever my life is. I'm a milkweed in the wind, and I just trust that I will land wherever I'm meant to land. But I had worked with Mike Brignardello at Caribou Ranch. I toured with him in the late 70s with the DeGarmo and Key Band. Or maybe that was 1980. He was the bass player for DeGarmo and Key. His wife, Kay, owned a store in Memphis. And the name of it escapes me right now, but I'll think of it later. Anyway, and I have never cared about what I have on. I'm sitting here, I didn't plan this. This jacket was a gift from a friend in the 90s. This shirt, a gift from another friend. This showed up at a concert. These shoes were somebody picked those out and sent them to me. I could care less about what I have on.
Yeah.
And Kay Brignardello had gotten in this jacket, her store in Memphis. It was called Chelsea. And she said, I think this would look great on Amy. And she wrapped it up and sent it to me. And a week later, I had a photo shoot with Mark Tucker. And I thought, hey, that's a pretty cool jacket.
Yeah.
And so I took it. But I mean, no thought.
I love it.
One of the things that really compelled us in a different direction with the album Unguarded was we were on a tour for a record called Straight Ahead. Mm-hmm. And the night that we were supposed to play Springfield, Missouri, there was a snowstorm. And the Highway Patrol, they called off the show. Wow. And so here we are with a night off, and then maybe next day we had a day off. But Mike Blanton, who was one of my managers at the time, was out just checking out what we were doing on the road. And he said, well, at least let's go to a movie. Yeah. And so we all went to see the movie Footloose. And everything about that film, the music, Kevin Bacon's performance, just using There's a Time for Everything, right? And Kevin Bacon's delivery. I don't know. Suddenly we just said, man, I have a chance to make a record that is fun. Yeah. And so that really turned our direction toward everything we want to say. Let's do it in a fun context.
Yeah. Okay, great. Tell me if I'm wrong. You write a lot with an acoustic guitar?
I do, if I write with anything.
Okay.
Yes.
So was there, when the 80s came along, all the technology, synthesizers and drum machines, did that change anything for your writing process, or was that just a function of collaborating or?
Well, really in the mid 80s, I was predominantly a lyricist.
Okay.
Or somebody would give me a track, because suddenly tracks could be like,
wow. Right.
And little ding diddling ding ding with the 5 or 6 chords I kept recirculating got really boring to me. And so whether I was working with Michael W. Smith or Dan Huff or Robbie Buchanan, a lot of people would just give me a chord progression. Yeah, okay. And so to me, it was like, I get to play on this playground. Yeah. And even if it didn't have a melody, I especially loved that because then I would just get to play on whatever they provided.
So you'd be collaborating. People would give you a cassette demo or whatever, and you still were doing a lot of melody stuff, bringing that to the table as well as lyrics. Okay, all right. What were you listening to in those days, in the early mid '80s? I mean, what was inspiring you? Do you remember?
No. I'm assuming whatever was on the radio. Sure. Because all of our direction was driven so much by what was available. Yeah. I know that, like if I loved Bill Champlin. And, I mean, obviously all the bands that we knew and loved. Yeah. Chicago, a lot of Journey. I guess I would just have to look at. I should have done more prep for this.
That's okay. So in general, you would say, I mean, '80s pop radio. That's because you grew up, listening to James Taylor and all that kind of thing. That was a big foundation for you, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So in 1986, you had your first #1 hit with Peter Cetera, "Next Time I Fall." Was that? Would you say that was a conscious decision to kind of start working your way into mainstream pop out of the CCM world, or was that just another thing that just kind of happened?
I was asked, Michael O'Mardian had wanted to work with me. Okay. And I'd met him several times. What a great guy, so talented. Yeah. And such an amazing career he's had. Mm-hmm. And I was in Atlanta visiting my college roommate. It was hard to track people down, and I got a call on her apartment phone. Yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's happened? Yeah. And it was Michael O'Mardian, and he said, hey, would you sing this song with Peter Cetera? Of course, I've loved him from Chicago. Sure. I loved his solo stuff. And anyway, my first thought was something catastrophic has happened and killed every female singer on the planet, and you're calling me. And yeah, and so I said yes, but once again, like an opportunity, I fell in through a side door.
Yeah.
And then I remember touring at that time pretty heavily in Australia, New Zealand. We came back and I was with somebody in the car driving down Hillsborough Road, and I said, God, I really had liked that song. I've never even heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
And they said, it's #1 on the charts.
Oh, really?
But I was just operating with such a high level of oblivion. So, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. I read when I was kind of researching some stuff that he specifically sought you out. Does that ring a bell? That's what the internet said.
Michael did. Peter had no idea who I was.
Interesting.
And so,
because Michael and Martin produced that track, if I'm not
yes.
mistaken. Yeah. Okay. So after being firmly established as essentially the torchbearer for CCM, Christian Contemporary music, you suddenly found yourself in the mainstream, and certainly with that came a lot of challenges, especially because you were the first. Is there, looking back, is there anything you do differently during that time?
Well, you set me up to say there were challenges during that time, and I think
I'm assuming. Just
yeah.
because.
Well, I mean, to me, they're just challenges when you're in your 20s trying to navigate your own life. And I guess there were challenges because it was public, but I certainly didn't feel public.
Yeah.
Because it was, all of life was just more unobserved.
Yeah.
And so I loved the experience of live music. Mm. I loved recording. As I said, we always made it like a communal experience.
Sure. Yeah.
And so just mostly what I remembered was not doing everything right, making a lot of really bad personal decisions. I'm so glad it was an unobserved time.
Yeah, no cell phones everywhere.
1986 was a year that I survived.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the Peter Cetera song. I
Yeah.
just was not at the, I kind of lost myself in all the work.
Yeah.
And it was fun, but at every stage in life, you kind of have to, you have to live, and we learn our best lessons usually by doing things the wrong way.
Sure. Yeah.
Creatively, personally, all those things. So, and so then by the end of the 80s, I was a young mom and 2 kids by the time that decade was up.
Yeah. Here's why I set you up, with the challenge thing. When I asked Michael that question last week, without hesitation, he said, when it happened to him, he instantly felt, I don't know if condemnation is the right word, but the church. I mean, the Christian music audience was very judgmental. That's how he felt anyway.
Oh,
and I just remember reading, of course, I read CCM cover to cover in those days, so I would have assumed that there would be challenges with that. So that's why I asked that way.
Oh, that's interesting because the family I was born into, I was the baby of the family, but nothing ever revolved around me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like the golden child. Mm. I'm not saying that's how he felt, but I can imagine his giftedness is so extraordinary. But I never felt that. Mm. I guess even when things were really bad, like, it wasn't my dinner table that those conversations were happening around.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about so many things, and that drives a lot of my good and bad decisions, but I'm not curious about somebody's opinion.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
And so, I don't make that decision. I was just wired that way. And so that was very helpful.
Yeah.
It was just helpful for the curiosity to be, what would happen if we did this?
Yeah.
What if we try it that way?
Yeah.
Oh, And so, but you can't help the way you're wired.
Sure.
You can have 10 people sitting around a table, sharing a meal, sharing conversation, sharing stories, and each one is going to come away from that with a completely different experience.
Yeah.
from how their taste buds are,
Yeah.
to who was sitting next to them, to who might have inappropriately groped them under the table, to on the way home,
Yeah.
my so-and-so asked me to marry him. I mean, and 10 totally different opinions.
Yeah.
And that is life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what being from a big family with a big extended family, what I do feel aware of is I have to wrap my arms around my own life and listen to my own gut.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is trying desperately to do that same thing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, yes, I am alive and well and part of a big herd. I've always felt like I was just part of a, they're all running and woo-hoo, we're all in this.
Yeah.
But we're just all in the pack.
I think you said I'm pretty sure it was you, and I've always loved this. You said, other people's opinions of me is none of my business, or something to that effect.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah. And also, people have an opinion because they feel strongly about something, and those strong feelings guide how they live their life. But I'm not privy to those.
Sure.
And so, and it's important for us to be driven by things that mean a great deal to us, but you can't impose those on somebody else.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the pendulum swung back pretty hard from the slick pop of Unguarded to Lead Me On, which a lot of people would say, in fact, I think it was CCM Magazine rated that as the #1 album in Christian contemporary music. It's certainly one of my favorites. Was that a conscious decision? Because it was a phenomenal record, but in terms of production, it was much more organic.
Right.
No drum machines, none of that kind of thing.
Right.
Was that...
I think that was just from a musical place. I think a lot of us were experiencing that. From a personal place, I know my grandmother had passed away. I was a young mother. I was pregnant during some of the recording of that. And I think everything about life felt earthy. And I think that the music industry was welcoming that.
Yeah.
Just like you said, as the pendulum swung back.
Yeah.
I remember, of course, I worked with basically all men because it's no surprise when a baby is due. It takes 9 months for the run.
Yeah.
And somehow, 2 weeks of tracking that record, my delivery date was in that 2-week period.
Wow.
And so there was not a woman helping to schedule. And so we actually cut the song Lead Me On a Thursday night. And I'm like wedging myself between cases and just trying to get to where I was supposed to do the scratch vocal. And I delivered Friday afternoon.
Are you kidding?
And then I was back in the studio on Monday with a newborn. So Friday, of course, I'm totally out of pocket. But by the time they were recording Friday afternoon, Brown said, I just want to call you to make sure that the key we picked for the song Shadows is appropriately. Can you just sing? And all I'm thinking is, my pelvic floor is stitched right now. We're just going to have to go with whatever key we thought was going to be right is going to be okay. And then, I was a first-time mom. I was 26, and I just took my son, Matt, to the studio on Monday, and that was just, that is kind of what it was like to be a working mom and traveling and all that. And so I remember being in the vocal booth, which was, because we were in the Bennett house, it was actually the powder room, so it was a half bath in the front hall of that old building, that old home in Franklin. And so there weren't any windows. Nobody could see in there. And, Matt's hungry, so I'm just nursing all that's new for me.
Yeah.
But I'm nursing him, and I'm doing the scratch vocal.
Oh, my gosh.
And the guys were so funny. We finished, and everybody said, hey, I'm hungry. Anybody else hungry? Because I guess there's all that suction sound going on.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah, but it was just, It was everything all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That is a lot. You mentioned one a few minutes ago. You had some pretty legendary people contribute to your records. Richard Page and Steve George from Mr. Mister,
Yes.
who said to say hello, by the way.
God, thank you.
Bill Champlin,
Yes.
countless players, behind the scenes folks. Any standout stories or pinch me moments?
Well, anytime that I could be like Richard Page, Steve George, Bill Champlin, just to be in the control room while these voices are, I'm hearing them. And I wasn't there for all the sessions. Yeah, it was just miraculous. And it's like, these are musicians that I have loved.
Yeah.
And let me think about any stories. I'm going to let that float around in my head.
Okay, sounds good. I was revisiting. I was listening to Unguarded the other day in the car, and Bill Champlin's voice came. I'm like, there's only one human being who belongs to that.
That's right.
Those pipes. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying another episode of Legends and Legacies. There is so much more cool stuff to come. We are talking with some seriously legendary household names, but to bring those in, to lock them in, we really need your help. Would you consider hitting like, hitting subscribe, leaving us a comment, good or bad, leaving us a review, and sharing with your friends? That will help us drive the numbers up. It'll help us get this thing out there, and it'll help us lock in some guests that we're really trying to get. And trust me, you are gonna want to hear from these people. We're close, but we could really use the extra push. So thanks for being here. We really, really are so glad to share these stories, these living legends who wrote the soundtrack of a generation. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon. Now back to Legends and Legacies. What are some other artists you really admired creatively in those days?
Oh my goodness. I've always loved Stevie Wonder. I loved Crowded House. I loved Mr. Mister. I loved who sang The Living Years?
Mike and the Mechanics.
Thank you, Mike and the Mechanics.
What a song. The dad verse, I can't get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be in our thing, with an orchestra. Can't wait.
Come on. Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
wait. Yeah, Paul Carrick sang that lead verse. Any others?
Yeah, can I call you back with my list?
Sure.
Because I didn't do my homework like I wished I had.
That's okay.
Okay.
If you could go back and collaborate with anybody in the 80s, any thoughts?
Oh my goodness. Gosh. I keep thinking about this. Do we have an hour?
Whatever you want.
In the 80s.
I could rattle off a list and you tell me if
Yeah,
anything jump out at
will you rattle off a list?
Let's see. Phil Collins, Mr. Mister, Tears for Fears, Journey, Genesis.
You know what? Phil Collins.
Yeah.
I would love to collaborate with Phil Collins. And part of it, he put on such a great live show. But, nobody can help how their vocal cords rub together. It just is.
Right.
And, but I think there could have been something complimentary between us because of just how our chords rub together. Yeah. And, oh my gosh.
I've got a real heart for that guy. He's probably my all-time favorite. Just the songs, the chord changes. I mean, he was a singularity. I mean,
yes.
A lot of people kind of got sick of him because you couldn't have pop radio on for 15 minutes and not hear at least one Phil Collins song. He was ubiquitous. And
yes, yeah.
And but of course, now looking back, I mean, what a talent!
Golly, yes. Okay, read the whole list. Read the list
of artists.
Yeah.
I'd have to go off memory. Yeah, golly. Of course, you'd think I would have it off the top of my head too.
James Taylor.
Well, that's more. I mean, 80s pop. Yeah. No.
George Michael, Human League, Foreigner.
Okay, I remember one night I was in New York and I believe this was the 80s, but I was on a work dinner with A&M Records, so I had a relationship with them from 1984 on, 85, and we were taken to a restaurant. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to ask you, what was the name of that restaurant? Mr. Chow. So somebody at A&M Records was in business with the owner of Mr. Chow's. So A&M was like co-owners of Mr. Chow's. And so that was always where the dinners were in Los Angeles, a work dinner. But in New York, we went to the Mr. Chow's for something, work. And I remember just the competition for attention because George Michael was in the one corner booth and Andy Warhol was in the other.
Oh my gosh.
And, it was just like whoever was getting the most attention.
Right.
The other corner was like, didn't want to lose the attention.
Right.
And so that was like, God, what a crazy night.
Yeah.
But George Michael,
Gosh, Peter Gabriel, Sting, Police.
Footloose and the New.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Bowie.
Yes.
Culture Club, Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
Eurythmics, Duran Duran.
Yeah.
Daryl Hall, John Oates.
Oh, my God.
It's endless.
Oh, yeah.
When I started building this show,
That's crazy.
I went and looked at the top 10, for the entire decade.
Yes.
It's hundreds of songs, and every one of them is iconic.
Yes.
And then I've had people say, "What about Super Freak by Rick James?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Out of all the incredible songs with these amazing melodies,
Yes.
really well-crafted lyrics,
Yes.
and you want me to put Super Freak in there? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
such
yeah.
a rich decade, and there's like all these subgenres within it.
Oh, so much,
and-
yes. Yeah,
So-
and one thing, when you consider a list of songs, there was such a shift because of electronics, keyboards, all that, so much creative exploration.
Yeah,
I mean, really, the framework
yeah,
on which a song could be presented was massive.
Yeah.
That was so different from the 60s and 70s. And then, just so much stuff that was epic. It was really the 80s.
yeah. And there were no rules.
And there were no rules. Yeah.
I mean, I remember I grew up kind of sheltered. Dad was a pastor, and I was the only one in my family who was musical. So when Shout came out in 1985, I remember running down into the basement with a boombox because I was afraid to listen to it upstairs where my mom could hear it. Because it just had this kind of dark sound, and like it was unheard of. Even Smitty's, when his the Big Picture record came out.
Okay.
His first two records were really organic, and then all of a sudden that thing with all these synths and drum machines, it's nobody heard anything like that.
Right, right.
And so my mom, we grew up, it was Kenny Rogers and Anne Murray playing all the time in my house, and so here I am trying to listen to 80s pop. I'm like, is this okay? And of course, now looking back, that stuff was innocent by today's standards. So the biggest touring acts of the last few years are Journey, Toto, Tears for Fears, Genesis. Biggest movie of the last decade was Top Gun Maverick. Biggest shows on Netflix are all 80s throwbacks, Stranger Things, Cobra Kai. And for the first time in history, we have an entire generation who loves their parents' stuff, music and movies. That's never happened before, at least like this.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts or theories on why there's such nostalgia for that particular time?
Theories. I just want to go, well, it was good. Also, our attention was not so divided. And wherever we were fully present. And I don't think that will ever be experienced again.
Yeah.
And, I'm always just thinking to myself as I'm trying to listen to understand the world that my kids are growing up in or, in their young adult life. And I say all the time, God, it was magical because we had the best of technology.
Yeah.
But we were not overwhelmed by input. The whole world wasn't observed. And so real discovery happened in waves. And there was a patience required for any creative effort to eventually be discovered, however that was. And It's kind of a comparison, but now it's like if something isn't get immediately responded to, ba, 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 people disappear. Oh, that's not worth anything. And I got to tell you, some creativity requires a long incubation.
Yeah.
And to me, really, that 80s era was whole new horizons of creativity with a very patient audience.
Yeah.
Everybody had patience to let things emerge. Even a song, it wasn't let the song emerge. You're not going to turn it off till the very end.
Yeah.
And I love that I was born in 1960.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just, cutting my teeth and really coming onto the music scene when it was the arsenal, the toolkit was the biggest and the best it had ever been.
Right.
And people had the attention span to let songs develop and to let artists develop.
Yeah. Not to mention, you would go buy a vinyl, bring it home, sit there, put it on, and then experience. You'd read the liner notes.
Yeah.
Who played on this? At least musicians did. And you took it in as a journey. Everybody was intentional about song choices, song order.
Right.
You wanted to take your audience on a journey from beginning to end.
Yes.
And that doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't. Even like, when we were creating the parts, when a song plays, on a record, the little space between the songs. So you'd have several people in there in the mastering room, and they're trying to create the distance on the tape before they cut the vinyl. And we would finish one song, and then now. Do you remember like piecing together a record before you actually cut the vinyl?
Yeah.
And because even how long the breath needs to be.
Right. Space between songs.
Man, that song, and we need a little bit longer, but you'd feel it with the people that you trusted.
Yeah.
With the producer, with the engineer there.
Yeah.
At Mastering Lab. As soon as there was Apple Music, that disappeared because everything just,
Right.
there's not the feeling of breath with
Yeah.
anything digital.
Yeah.
And there's certainly not spacing. It just pops up the next thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's just as it should be now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're always in exploration mode. What's next? What's next?
Right.
But it's kind of like how I feel on the road these days. I'll go out and I'll go, well, a lot of gray hair out there. And mine would be too, more than it is if I didn't color it. But you cannot unmake your history.
Yeah.
You can't undo the music you grew up with.
Yeah.
You can't undo. And I think, yay for people living healthier lives longer. And so to me, it's the perfect time for our generation to keep alive and celebrate the things that we loved with our kids.
Yeah.
And for all kinds of reasons, just healthy longevity, and man, we grew up during a great time and helped create a great time.
Right. Yeah, that's one of our things we're trying to do with this, is to share those experiences with our kids who missed out on that. And I wish I had $1 for every time my daughter or her friends have said, I wish I could experience what you did.
Yeah.
It's almost a mythology.
Yes. Hey, probably no way to do it, but wouldn't it be great if people exchanged? You have to put your cell phone in one of those lockable bags, and they give it back to you. And in exchange, you're given an Instamatic camera.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Because even a couple of my daughters, they have this app on their phone that, they take a picture, but it develops, you can't look at it. So you're not editing.
Yeah, right.
And she'll take one picture of something, maybe two. And part of me was like, what? And like just creating delayed gratification.
That's a big deal.
But if you really wanted somebody with the whole experience, if the mall comes to be and all those things to really experience this,
Yeah.
you have to be fully present. You cannot be looking at a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. We've thought about that. In fact, one thing we want to do is we want to have photo booths like we had in an 80s mall and instantly send all those pictures. Not only that, when people buy a ticket, we want them to submit a picture or two of themselves in the 80s.
Okay.
And the very last thing at night of the show is a mashup of Take Me Home by Phil Collins, which is a kind of a benediction.
Yes.
With Where the Streets Have No Name by U2. Those two songs dovetail perfectly, kind of on top of each other.
Yeah.
While that's playing, these pictures people submitted, we want to do a montage. So they're seeing themselves on screen. So you're singing Take Me Home.
Oh my gosh.
And all of a sudden, wait, that's me.
Yeah.
Those moments where people really feel immersed.
Yes.
And, they, like you're saying, they bring something to tip. But I love we'll totally give you credit for that. That Instamatic idea, that's great. The Polaroid thing.
Yeah. I was reading a writing by Joan Chittister this morning, and it was just talking about being present and, trying to tame the monkey brain and all that. And it's, I'm 64. It's a challenge now.
Yeah.
But I have so much cellular memory of a simpler time. And to me, I can't imagine not having that as a reference point.
Yeah.
And so I love everything about what you're doing, everything, and just forcing people to be present.
Yeah. Yeah, if we do it right, I think it's going to be an incredibly emotional experience.
Yes.
Because, this songs are, when they're done right, it's somebody's story. Every one of these songs, I've been really intentional about the song list, and kind of like the record paradigm. I've crafted this thing in a way where it's super intentional what song leads to the next song.
Yeah.
And it's in a sense like listening to a vinyl. And again, this from a live performance standpoint, one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is watching people's reactions, because everybody out there brings their story to the table.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we do I Want to Know What Love Is, every female who lived through the 80s is going to be thinking of a high school dance or whatever. Yeah. Guys will be thinking about their Corvette or whatever. But everybody is going to be grinning from ear to ear. Might be a few that, they got their heart broken over a song. But if we do it right, we're telling everybody's stories.
Yeah.
And so I just think there's something powerful about that. If you hadn't gone into music, what's something you could see yourself doing?
Well, fortunately, I'm going to answer your question. I'm glad I'm in music, but
we are too.
I think two things that I loved from the time I was little, being outside camping. I'm not sure how that would have taken, how it would have exhibited, but some way, maybe I would have. I'm not organized enough to run a summer camp, but some way of just getting people in nature.
Yeah.
Some kind of camping experience.
You kind of do that with barefoot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a 10-year commitment on our farm, and we've completed that 10 years.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So, and the other thing is, I love food, and I love cooking. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
And so somehow just food preparation, just somehow involved with that restaurant. Maybe.
All right. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
Well, I would definitely say fulfilling my dream of being a mom, having 4 children in the context of a very busy work life. It's my greatest accomplishment.
Yeah.
And there are accomplishments that somebody else might say that was really big, but everything is yeah, that would be it, being a mom.
That's a big one. One of my takeaways from almost 3 decades when I was with Michael W. Smith was seeing the impact of a song on people's lives. You know, the stories he would tell of getting letters like Place in This World, which you were involved with. You've had the profound experience of actually writing songs that have impacted people's lives, even changed some people's lives. Do you have any stories of those that are particularly meaningful for you?
Tom Hemby and I wrote a song called Ask Me. And I was inspired by stories of sexual abuse from two friends of mine who are still dear to me. But I didn't know them in their early years. And so I recorded the song, and it's from the standpoint of a young girl at the beginning of the song. And that came out in the early 90s. And I just remember, especially playing for larger crowds and just seeing solitary figures. It was never a radio hit or anything like that. But it was just a chance, if that were someone's story, for them to be seen and to say, this was my experience. And that's probably the most powerful for me, is that song. And that still happens. But when we were young, and in a large crowd, to me, it felt very vulnerable for a young woman to stand up.
Yeah. Love it. Last two questions. Any tour dates or projects coming up that you're excited about? Anything you want to talk about?
Yes.
Or can talk about?
Yeah. I'm still touring. Last year I did 80 shows, which feels like a lot for this time in life, and I'll do almost that many this year. And I am currently working on a record.
Woo!
And I'm so excited about it. And we're about a little over 2/3 the way finished. And it's my first studio record that's not holiday since 2013.
Wow.
I know. What I've been waiting on, I don't know. Creativity's just gone to other things in life. Yeah.
Can you tell us anything about it? Any kind of direction artistically, and if you'd rather keep it a surprise, that's fine too.
No, it's fine. Well, I'll tell you, the producer is a friend, Mac McAnally, and but it started off saying, hey, will you just help me record these two songs? And before that, I said, hey, I've got a lyric that I have the chorus for. I could use help with music for the verses. And so, I just started sending people music or lyrics saying, do you want to participate with this? And I'm not sure why I wasn't doing that before. But Wayne Kirkpatrick was my favorite co-writer for a long time. Well, Michael W. was my favorite co-writer for a long time. And then Wayne, and now Wayne's so busy writing musicals, and I don't have the mental capacity for that. Like, it's got to be 3-minute thing.
Right.
Anyway, so, but I'm, it's just, you can't really describe it. You just have to hear the music.
That's great. Okay. Last thing, I'm new at this. I'm not an interviewer. Is there any question that a decent interviewer should ask Amy Grant that I haven't asked?
I think you've done a great job.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm learning. Each time we do one of these, it's a new experience.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last thing, this is more commentary than anything, but as a way of thanking you, of course, Smitty was such a huge part of my life, still is. You were too. There were a couple really big moments that I have to thank you for. I think it's important to do it publicly. Number one, when you shared a birthday with my dad, and you met him, I think it was on the first Christmas tour, 1997. It must have been 15 years later. You asked me how my dad was doing, and you remembered that you shared a birthday with him. A lot of people have said this about you. You've got an amazing memory, but that meant a lot. The two others are, I found myself, the first time we had toured together, I think with Smitty, it was 2010, 11, somewhere in there. And I was heading into a divorce. And Michael must have told you, and we were at whatever that amphitheater is in Detroit. You took me around a corner. I don't even know if you remember this. There was a porch swing back there. And you sat me down on a porch swing and you put your arm around me and you gave me advice and you encouraged me. That meant so much to me, especially given the path that you walked very publicly and all that kind of thing. The third one was we were on the Christmas tour in 2017. We had one show to do before Thanksgiving break. My dad went to heaven. And of course, you know, we were sitting on the bus having sushi. I just sat down and my phone was on my lap and my brother was calling me and I instantly did the math. I'm like, it's, you know, we were on the West Coast. They're in the East Coast. I instantly thought, wait a minute, it's 2:00 in the morning.
It's late.
This isn't a good call.
Yeah.
And he told me what happened. And so obviously brutal. The next day I walked in and I just feel these arms around me. You came up and you gave me a hug and you said, I don't remember what you said, but you just said something really kind. I think again, you talked about how you remembered my dad and you know, that's just really, really kind, you know, and you're known for that. And so I just want to thank you for being that kind of person. When people have asked me over the years, what's it like to work with people like Michael and Amy? I've always said those two people are where they are for good reason.
Wow.
And I really believe that. I think that you've been given the platform you've been given because of who you are. And so that's it.
Thank you.
Just want to thank you for your time. Thanks for being part of this. We're honored and can't wait to have you come to a show sometime and relive the 80s with us.
Let's do it.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. What a privilege for me to interview Amy. She is obviously as kind and generous as they come. She's also very wise. Be sure to follow Amy, go see her on tour, and stay in touch. I'm not sure at the time of filming who our next guest is, but I promise you, whoever it is, it's going to be a good one. We've got a lot of people we're pursuing, and so be sure to click like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and we'll see you next time on Legends and Legacies. Thank you so much. See you soon.